That woman did not come down to straighten out anything in that district. In that polling place, she did not show up. So it was a mess. And like it's been said, if this is the way people are going to get to the point, they won't even come out in November. Their votes didn't count. So we need to get together with that supervisor of election woman and have her come down and try to straighten out some of these things. We have said over and over, and I've said this since 2008, we need to find a way to take this voting precinct out of that nursing home. It's not convenient for the people or the nursing home, and go back to 10th Avenue South.
Thank you. You would just say the floor. Any questions? Commissioner Boyd, did you have one?
No, I don't think so. Although it might be worth one minor thing. As I did look at the technology, because I thought, as you know, I'm a tech kind of guy and thought it was intriguing. As far as I could see, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't a swipe of your driver's license. It took a picture of it. There was a little plastic stand that you put your license in, took a picture. Maybe it did both, but the one I was at took a picture of it.
Before, when we voted before, when they had the paperwork, they were concerned about our signatures. Your signature had to match your signature.
Right.
When they scanned my driver's license about 6 or 8 times, and they finally decided after, and I think they only did it because I was raised in hell. They let us vote. That was the only reason. And they said, oh well, we got rid of the paperwork. I said the signature. I was so mad and angry, my hand was shaking, so I know. I said my signature does not match. So you can't be looking at my signature.
Well, that's actually, witnessing at the supervisor of elections, we watched and contested numerous provisional ballots because the signatures did not match. And what was interesting is when I went to vote, I tried to fill out on the iPad the signature, and the first, like the left portion of the iPad wouldn't work.
No.
It wouldn't show your signature. So I eventually moved my signature to the right of it and got it all in. But anybody who thought they signed and did it, if it was just a partial of their name on it, the supervisor of elections was not accepting them.
Exactly. So we need to find out, are you still recognizing signatures? Because on the scanners, they were not recognizing
The
signatures.
supervisor of elections was not if they didn't recognize signatures was one of them. Another one was if the poll worker put the wrong political party of a person, they discarded it. If a poll worker filled out any information on it, they were discarded. If a poll worker, what's the other one? I'm trying to think. Glenn?
Didn't list the party at all, for example.
If they didn't list the party at all on the outside of the ballot, it was disregarded. All those different ones were let go for a variety of different reasons.
Well, whoever had the information in the scanners didn't put the information in correctly. My whole family, we're Democrats, and they've always voted Democrat. And they say this is why Marvin Lowe, his was not counted. It didn't show what party he'd been voting that way
Right. And
for
if
years.
it's a provisional ballot, it was written by the clerk, it was written by the polling clerk, not the person voting. And in addition, the other incidents that happened was if a poll worker gave somebody the wrong ballot, say they gave a Democrat or Republican ballot, and the person filled it out, obviously that one doesn't count. If the poll worker gave someone wrong information, it didn't count. I mean, it was there was a lot of ballots, and not just from our community. We were watching the whole county get, you were there, you saw, there was a number of different ones from all over the county that these mistakes were all poll worker
But the
mistakes.
poll workers gave out these forms, it wasn't the voter.
Right.
So it shouldn't be, we should not have to pay for
Right.
their mistakes.
Commissioner Amoroso?
My question would be for Glenn. She brought up a good point. Our signatures always counted, and they always said, make sure that your signature's the same, because years ago when I broke my hand, my signature changed. So, they always asked me. Now this time, I went to the poll, they ran my driver's license, and Commissioner McLoy, you're right, and you're right. The machines that they use, the front has a little thing, they put my driver's license in and took a picture of it. They could not find me, then they scanned it a couple times and told me, no, you can't vote here, you need to go somewhere else. But when I finally voted, I signed that iPad, and it wasn't anything close to what my signature should be. So how is that allowable?
Well, it's a good point. I mean, I also voted that day and signed it with your finger, and obviously signing it with your finger on an iPad is a lot different than signing it with a pen. I don't know the answer to that question, and that to me is a good question for the supervisor. How do they really compare an electronic signature with a finger on an iPad that the left side didn't work? Because I had that same experience, left side didn't work.
I used a stylus that they handed to
Yeah, they
me.
give you
So,
stylus too.
again, these are all just different issues, and the question is, are there enough issues to go forward?
Right, Commissioner McGuinn?
Just in defense of Apple, I don't think they were iPads. I'm not sure. But whatever they were. But I certainly share the concern. I mean, all of us have signed at Home Depot or probably not Publix, but various places. And I always say, and even at my credit union, it has an electronic, it makes us all look like idiots because none of us write cursive anymore anyhow, so you don't have much practice with signatures. And then it's definitely different with that. So I think that is a very valid concern that, maybe this technology is not quite there yet for.
Question too, and if they are going to use that, they should give us a little pin or something. You can't use your nails.
No,
You have to
yeah,
use
I
that
agree.
right there, so they
Yeah.
should give you a pin or something.
No, I think I did.
I got it.
I had a
I
little
think I had
stylus,
some sort of
Maybe
stylus,
not.
but even that is still quite different than a pen.
big time.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I know we're probably gonna have other, I see you've got some more blue
Yeah.
cards here. And I just wanna try to kind of keep up with, I too, and in fact, after the next day, when I got a couple of phone calls from folks who were concerned, I went back and tried to the best of my ability to recall what I'd experienced throughout the day and wrote it on the back of a sheet of paper here. And, the first note I have here is that, I voted at 7:45 in the morning, and it took them several minutes, I was the only one there. It took them several minutes to figure out who I was. Of course, it takes me, they did figure it out faster than I normally figure it out in the morning. But I had the same problem with the signature. And now that I'm hearing this repeatedly, I'm thinking, it brings to mind a conversation that I personally had with the supervisor here several years ago regarding verifications of signatures. And she flat out told me that there was a system in place that was able to scan your signature, some sort of optics scanner, to verify signatures. Now, I thought that was a little far-fetched, a little, too much science, but, my concern here is it seems that we keep changing the equipment, we keep changing the systems, and we keep having issues. I don't see, I don't know that there's been more than one election cycle in this county in the last 10 or 12 years that's gone without controversy, that's gone without somebody somewhere, being impacted. So I just wanted to make my comment about the signature,
Okay, thank you.
and also, one more thing, Retha, you did call me at about 10 minutes to 6,
Yeah,
and I was in West Palm Beach on the interstate when you called me, and I immediately did call Glenn, and Glenn, you called the supervisor or somebody in the supervisor's office, and you relayed back to me that they would get somebody over there immediately.
That's what she said.
And I was at that precinct within 15 minutes, and I was there for the last hour of the day, and I will tell you that nobody showed up from the supervisor's office. And what's disturbing is, in preparation for this meeting this morning, I went back and pulled some articles, some newspaper accounts leading up to the election and after the election, and I think the supervisor was quoted as having 48 people in the field on election day. And my question is, if you really, and I'm sure you did, make contact with the supervisor's office, why the heck was nobody dispatched to that precinct? Okay, so,
At
thank
one of
you.
the busiest times, too.
Right, thank you.
Commissioner Zerdy?
Thank you, Mayor. Retha, how many folks do you think, did you do any kind of idea as far as talking to
When-
folks in the
when I-
neighborhood
yes,
about how many folks that
well,
have expressed
when
the same thing?
I went back down there after my husband finally voted, and I went back doing like every couple hours. And when my daughter-in-law went in to vote, there were 6 people in line with her. No, those 6 people didn't sign anything. They told them you had to go to the other poll, and they would, I guess 3 or 4 of them was Haitian. you know. They don't understand what you're telling them, they can't vote, or they got to go someplace else. They're not gonna do that. They're just gonna get in their car and drive away. When my husband was down there, it was 4 people. And they were turned away. They did not vote.
I'm saying if you've,
This, and I've talked to several of them, it's right in our district, from 12th Avenue to 15th. And I talked to 6 people, said we didn't vote, we didn't get a chance to vote, we didn't know what happened. They said we couldn't vote. I said, well, we just have to talk to the commissioner, and they talked to the supervisor of election.
Mayor, I'd like to understand what comes up here tonight, maybe to let us know if they got even a notice that there was gonna be a change in the way that we were going to vote.
No,
Or in the polling
no,
location.
we didn't get anything. We've been
I
voting
didn't-
at that
I didn't
precinct
either.
since 2008. These people have been voting right there.
And you normally get some idea that,
So you get nothing.
uh,
I mean, they send you the sample ballots. They got the sample ballots. We got the sample ballots. My husband and I, we got the sample ballots.
well, I know for a fact, just because I do a lot of drawing and writing for a living, that when you sign something, you know, your hand's flat, it's rested, it's braced differently, and when you do the pad, it's sort of free floating, and there's no way that there could be that kind of level of similarity in that. So I really kind of wonder where this whole thing, and where the desire to go to the system even came from, or there was no input from any, that I know of.
I vote all the time. I didn't know we had the scanners. I know they talked about it. I read about it. They were getting scanners and things like that, but it doesn't work, not in that precinct.
Well, also, I don't know if that was that precinct, but it was in the city of Lake Worth when we were there, Glenn. They turned away, they disqualified a number of ballots, either 5 or 6 ballots or 7 ballots, because the people voted in the wrong polling location. How is that possible to vote in the wrong polling
And you
location?
just voted there 2 or 3 elections
If they're
before
checking,
that.
if they're checking them in, how could they throw out ballots if you're voting in the wrong polling location? Vice Mayor?
Again, I want
We've
to,
got a number of cards here.
I want to make sure that, I keep up with the story, and Glenn, you know, you mentioned earlier that, I guess, after the meeting tonight, anybody that has names or specifics they can share with you. But you mentioned a couple of situations where you were personally, where family members that either didn't vote or people that you observed were turned away. Give me a low number of total number of people you feel that.
I was saying a total that from, like I said, I went down there at 7:30, I went back home, tell my husband to go vote. And during the day, I was there 3 or 4 times during the day. I would say at least 10 people did not vote, was turned away.
And would you be able to give some
Yes.
names to Glenn after?
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Michael Mahoney, followed by Ginny Powell.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I went to, at 9 in the morning, I went to vote at 3064 precinct, which is the First Congregational Church, 1415 North K Street. And I was told I gave my license and my voter card, and it was the same thing that Helen Green went through. There was no record for my name.
Could you speak in the microphone, please?
There was no record for my name, so they said I had to fill out a provisional ballot, which I did. I think we had to, I think you do sign the provisional ballot, so that's probably the signature to look at as far as that, what's on the pad or anything. And then, I'll just skip exactly what I did. And then I turned that in, it didn't go in that box, I just handed it to the lady. And then I would talk to somebody at around 3 in the afternoon and told them what I went through, and they said, yeah, they had heard some other people went through it too, and if you want, I could go back and I could vote, and they could pull the provisional ballot, which is what I did. So I went back up to North K Street. They remembered who I was, and there was another, like a supervisor, not a supervisor, but another supervisor was there, and they said it was okay that they could get my provisional ballot back, and I could go ahead and vote. I never saw it again, but they gave me the ballot, and then I went ahead and voted. and put it into the machine. So I guess hopefully the vote counted. But going back to the morning, there were 5 people that came in. I knew 3 of the people, including me, there were 5 people that came in. 4 out of the 5, including me, were told they had to fill out provisional ballots. And the one that actually worked, the one that they had his information, she says, okay, here's your ballot, but when you turn it in, you gotta go over there, meaning the other precinct, and there's 2 in the same building. So that's what I read in the paper too, that they had, the woman with the iPad or whatever that we were dealing with had the other precinct, apparently. She had the iPad for the wrong precinct, or her information was for the precinct in the same room. So the one guy that worked, he was supposed to be at the other end of the room registering. And us 4 that were in the right place were told there's no record. Obviously, because that's what I read in the paper, that the woman had the wrong precinct registered to her iPad. So I guess errors are gonna happen. So I mean, a provisional ballot is a good idea, but I kind of wondered that too at the time. I turned mine in, I sealed it and handed it to the woman. But one of the other people, he handed her the envelope and the ballot separately, and he kind of left, and then she put it together. And they just put them in a stack like behind her. There was no box.
Right.
So I thought, in the future, I think it's a good idea. The provisional ballot needs to be there, especially when we're dealing with technology. So if they don't have the record, at least somebody can get their vote in. But they should, the way we put the real ballot in the machine where nobody really has access to it anymore, I think the provisional ballot should be something similar where you drop it into a box or something where, you know, the only people that can deal with it are the people at the office, not the people out in the field and everything. That's my opinion anyway.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mercer?
Real quick, so you had a provisional ballot. You found out from a friend that you could go back and vote again, so you did. You didn't find out from a supervisor election? Anybody
No,
there?
I had talked to someone and told them what happened, and they said, yeah, they heard it happen to some other people, and that you were allowed to go back and you could vote again, or, you know, vote real this time.
Okay, so you found out on the street, no one inside said, you know, you have a provisional ballot, but later you can come back and vote.
Right, no, I just found out on my own, and I went back and they let me, they had the computer fixed, you know, where they were supposed to be, and then everything was there, and I was able to get the ballot and vote.
Well,
I never saw, I guess they pulled the provisional ballot, I didn't see that happen. They just gave me my real ballot, I went in and voted.
We'll look up the list. When we were there that afternoon, the supervisor of elections, after being asked by the reporter from the Palm Beach Post, what was her name? Christine Stapleton, whether or not people could find out, how are people supposed to know if their provisional ballots didn't count? And she said, do you contact them? And the supervisor of elections said, no. But they can call me. And she said, well, what number could they call you at? And she gave the number. Come to find out later on, the next day after that, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, information was given out that people could now go online, that they had put something up online to check, but they didn't respond, and everybody that I saw that went there, they didn't get that nobody responded online to let them know whether or not, it just did nothing. And you could only do that through 5 p.m. And they posted it at 3 o'clock. So, just as an aside. Commissioner Morris, do you have a follow-up?
My question is to Glenn. I know that everyone that votes, at some point you can see who voted. You can't see how they voted, you can see who voted. When is that information available? You know, because I heard that won't be available till November, but, you know,
That was among the information we requested, we've not received yet.
okay, because it would be interested for especially the people in the room to be able to see that list and make sure that their vote was counted.
Well, if I could, if you don't mind, Ms. Mahoney, if you didn't go back, your provisional ballot would not have counted.
Why is that?
You didn't do a thing wrong, because the clerk didn't list your party affiliation on the front. So you're a real live example of what we're talking about. If this summer, if you did not go back, your vote would not have counted.
Because he's on this list?
He was on the provisional list, he's about in the 7 in the middle, white,
Yes,
Michael
you are.
Mahoney. Voter returned to vote regular ballot, so your vote counted, but And if it says no party listed on front, election clerk error, which would have been not counted, as the other 14 were not counted if you had.
Now, I know if you want me to have them meet with the other 3 people that filled out the provisional ballots, I know them, I can tell them.
I'd love to get the after
Did they go back to vote?
I'm not sure. I didn't speak to them. One was Matt. There was 2 people from Adopt a Family and another girl that I know. So I
If you could get together with the
I could
attorney, he can check for you and at least get their names to see if they're both, if they went through the same situation. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. City
Next
Manager?
question. Did the staff give you any information when you had the provisional ballot? Did they give you any documents to talk to you about follow-up or anything? Was there any information given to you?
No, just told me what I had to fill out. And
So you didn't receive an information sheet that talked about what a provisional ballot was or who to contact and the rules government?
they did say that, not an information, but she said, yeah, they just gotta verify that everything was in order and then the vote would be counted.
But you didn't walk out with a piece of paper, an informational piece of paper that
No.
told you what a provisional ballot is?
No, I didn't. I just thought it's definitely a good idea though that people, when they do a provisional ballot, that they should be able to drop it into like a box or something, just knowing that it's not gonna get, cause she just put it like in a stack behind her. And like I said, the one gentleman didn't even seal it himself, she did that for him. So it just seemed like, at the time, I was like, that's kinda weird that it would be so loosely handled like that, but
Vice Mayor,
Thank you.
you have one more question?
Your account is,
it was basically the same as Helen Green, pretty much.
I didn't have, I guess there's an article here. Your account is really kind of bizarre. I don't know who would have the presence of mind to start the discussion after, at some point during the day. It says, hey, you can go back and give another whack at it. I just, and furthermore.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, if they were on a lockbox or provisional ballot, you
And furthermore, if I'm working in the precinct, I wouldn't let you vote again, if you already were in there once, but that's just me. But anyway, a couple quick questions. You already mentioned that they didn't put your provisional ballot in a box.
right.
They just set it off to the side. Number 2, according to what Glenn just said, your provisional ballot did not count because there was no party affiliation. Now, without telling me, I don't wanna know if you have a party, or what your party affiliation is, but do you have a party affiliation?
Yes.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because I think, Glenn, in one of our conversations over the last week, we had that conversation that in some cases, provisional ballots were discarded because there was no party affiliation affixed to the envelope.
By the clerk.
By the
not-
clerk.
Not by the person, the clerk,
And-
forgets to put it in.
And I find that problematic because if you have no party affiliation, you were still permitted to vote in this election, which means there is no party affiliation, so there's nothing to mark.
And if you're like, go ahead, hand this to Tony.
They have to put NPA on it.
Or something,
Put a D,
sure.
an R, or an I.
Something. And,
In the white?
and I guess the last question.
That would be bad.
Hold on one second, Vice Mayor.
I was only asking you because the Matthew that he's talking about, his provisional ballot was not counted either, by clerical error.
By clerical
There's no error.
Right. Well, there were numerous of them. Vice Mayor, do you have your follow-up?
I think this is the last one.
Well, we've got a lot of people to hear from, so let's try to.
This is getting interesting. Glenn, let me ask you a question. I mean, you're the legal here today. But from a layman's perspective, it seems to me that if I go in to vote and I'm in a situation where I have to vote provisional, I'm told that I gotta vote provisional, that would be the last course of action offered to me as an option to vote and not a first response. In other words, if they're confused and they don't know what's going on, or they're not sure, they can't find you, or whatever, and this has been going on for some time, it sounds to me like they're handing out provisional ballots like sticks of chewing gum. Here, just take a provisional ballot and we'll sort it out later. And my thought is, am I correct,
It's not supposed to be the first option, you're correct.
okay. So, but then what we're hearing is on the back end of the process, when the canvassing board gets hold of provisional ballots, there's a higher level of scrutiny, if you will, over whether or not they're gonna count the vote. So, let me see if I got this straight. If we didn't do what we were supposed to, if there was confusion at the line level, and we're essentially, I hate to use the word force, but I can't think of a better word, forcing the voter to vote provisional, there's a much higher chance that the vote's gonna get
That's
kicked
not-
out because of clerical error or a number of things we've kind of touched on tonight.
Frankly, that's exactly the opposite of what the law says. The law says you're supposed to have a presumption in favor of the provisional ballot counting. Only in extreme circumstances should it not be counted, and as we observed, that was not
It
the
was not the
standard that
case.
the supervisor here used. It was a much different standard. It was almost like you had to prove that you were right instead of them proving that you were wrong.
Okay, and we had a handout here, a two-page handout that deals with provisional ballots, and I have never voted provisional, so I'm gonna ask Glenn, this first document, the DSDE 49OS, this is the front and the back, is this what is given to the voter to fill out? and to
Yes.
sign it? Did you get something like this?
Yeah, it was on the cardboard.
Right.
Okay, and then I noticed in the back, all the way in the, I guess it's the back flap or back page, all the way in the bottom right corner, it says for supervisor elections and canvassing board use only, and they check counted or not counted. Now,
That's on the outside of the envelope.
okay, on the outside of the envelope. So when you, Glenn, asked for these provisional ballots, were all these filled in? As to
Well,
whether they
again,
were counted or not counted, or was there-
We were not allowed to take a copy or photograph of them. At the time of the canvassing board, we were standing 5 feet away, trying to peer over and see what was there. And when we made an appointment to go and inspect them, we wanted to make copies of them, and they said no. There is an exemption for copies, but there's no exemption for photographs, so we should have been allowed to take photos with our phones, and they denied that. So it's hard to answer your question because we weren't able to make copies.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on, folks.
Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
could, I think if I understood your question, you're referring to that bottom right-hand side where it says the canvassing board action, the box for count, the box for not counted. One or the other was marked during the canvassing board.
By the
So-
supervisor of
By
elections.
the supervisor of election. Once the board members made their determination, one or the other was checked.
But there's also notation, blank boxes that state reason if rejected, and that, I guess, I didn't ask my question completely. Was there an explanation as to why it was rejected if it was rejected?
Don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know at this point.
Ginny Powell, followed by David Winters.
Hello, and good evening. First of all, let me just say real quickly that I'm disappointed that I didn't get to read my comments about some constructive comments I thought about how to fund the infrastructure. I thought that's what this meeting was about, and I was not here to criticize. I had some very good comments, and I will plan on submitting those to you for your consideration.
Oh,
Please, thank you.
please come back for a public forum on those, I'd like to.
Well, you know, I'm listening here tonight, it seems so far anyway that there are some very legitimate concerns. And I don't know if this is just, it sounds like actually from Read the Low that there were concerns even prior to this election. This is the first I've heard about this election having any problems, and I tend to pride myself on, you know, having a clue as to what's going on.